Yo, we back with another episode of Sage Talk. We here with my guy,
On the poet,
Devon Lassine, and we back at it again. Before we get into it, before we go ahead and get into the video that we're going to be reviewing today, I need y'all to hit that like button, hit that share button, hit that comment button, and if you can, do all three. Let us know what type of videos we should respond to. If you want to send us some videos, please go ahead and do that as well. Head over to our website. If you want to check out some graphic design, get some graphic designing, please go ahead and do that. And then also head over to our YouTube where you can find all of our other content and also our Instagram. And all of those are at the Gilded Sages. And so, without further ado, what are we going to be talking about today, man?
We are going to be talking about the Telecommunications Act of 1996.
And what do the people need to know about that before we get into this discussion?
So, what the Telecommunications Act of 96 did was it allowed for bigger businesses to consolidate, meaning to merge, and to pretty much monopolize over the coming years after the bill was signed.
So you're talking about the phone companies, AT&T, the Verizons, what's that?
The internet companies.
Got you.
All media. So this was pretty much media.
Got you.
Radio really got hit hard by this, but we'll definitely see what this was intended to do and compare it to what actually ended up happening.
Okay. It is what it is. Go ahead, hit that like button, hit that share button, and we're going to go ahead and jump into the video. Let it.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Vice President, Mr. Speaker, members of Congress, and ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to begin by thanking the Library of Congress for hosting us here. At my understanding, this may be the only time in American history a piece of legislation has been signed here, and perhaps the first time in 3 decades when one has been signed on Capitol Hill. If that is so, then this is certainly a worthy occasion. I thank Lily Tomlin for reminding us that the internet can be fun. And the students at Calvin Coolidge for reminding us that the internet can do a world of good. I thank the Vice President who fought for this bill for so long on behalf of the American people. And I thank the members of Congress in both parties, starting with the leadership, who believed in the promise and the possibility of telecommunications reform. I thank the vast array of interest groups who had sometimes conflicting concerns about this bill, who were able to work together and work through them so that we could move this together. This law is truly revolutionary legislation that will bring the future to our doorstep. In the State of the Union just a few days ago, I asked the Congress to pass this law, and they did with remarkable speed and dispatch. Even the years that were spent working on it were a relatively short time, given the tradition of congressional decision-making over major matters. This historic legislation, in my way of thinking, really embodies what we ought to be about as a country and what we ought to be about in this city. It clearly enables the age of possibility in America to expand, to include more Americans. It will create many, many high-wage jobs. It will provide for more information and more entertainment to virtually every American home. It embodies our best values by supporting the kind of market reforms that the Vice President mentioned, as well as the V-chip. And it brings us together, and it was passed by people coming together. This bill is an indication of what can be done when Republicans and Democrats work together in a spirit of genuine cooperation to advance the public interest and bring us to a brighter future. It is fitting that we mark this moment here in the Library of Congress. It is Thomas Jefferson's building, Most of you know President Jefferson deeded his books to our young nation after our first library was burned to the ground in the War of 1812. The volumes that lined these walls grew out of Jefferson's legacy. He understood that democracy depends upon the free flow of information. He said, "He who receives an idea from me receives instruction himself without lessening mine. And he who lights his taper at mine receives light without darkening me." Today, the information revolution is spreading light, the light Jefferson spoke about all across our land and all across the world. It will allow every American child to bring the ideas stored in this reading room into his or her own living room or schoolroom. Americans have always had a genius for communications. The power of our founding fathers' words reverberated across the world from the moment they were said down to the present day. From the Pony Express to the miracle of a human voice over the phone line, American innovation and communications have broken the barriers of time and space to make it easier for us to stay in touch, to learn from each other, to reach for our highest aspirations. Today, our world is being remade yet again by an information revolution, changing the way we work, the way we live, the way we relate to each other. Already, the revolution is so profound that it is changing the dominant economic model of the age. And already, thanks to the scientific and entrepreneurial genius of American workers in this country, it has created vast, vast opportunities for us to grow and learn and enrich ourselves in body and in spirit. But this revolution has been held back by outdated laws designed for a time when there was one phone company, 3 TV networks, no such thing as a personal computer. Today, with the stroke of a pen, our laws will catch up with our future. We will help to create an open marketplace where competition and innovation can move as quick as light. An industry that is already 1/6 of our entire economy will thrive. It will create opportunity, many more high-wage jobs, and better lives for all Americans. Soon, working parents will be able to check up on their children in class via computer. Families heading off on vacation trips will be able to program the fastest route in their car computers, thanks to the work the Department of Transportation is now doing. On a rainy Saturday night, you'll be able to order up every movie ever produced or every symphony ever created in a minute's time. For those of us who like to watch too many movies and listen to too much music in a single sitting, that may be a mixed blessing. This law also recognizes that with freedom comes responsibility. Any truly competitive market requires rules. This bill protects consumers against monopolies. It guarantees the diversity of voices our democracy depends upon. Perhaps most of all, it enhances the common good. Under this law, our schools, our libraries, our hospitals will receive telecommunications services at reduced cost. This simple act will move us one giant step closer to realizing a challenge I put forward in the State of the Union, to connect all our classrooms and libraries to the information superhighway by the year 2000. Not through a big government program, but through a creative, ever-unfolding partnership led by scientists and entrepreneurs, supported by business and government, and communities working together. We know the information age will bring blessings for our people.
So that's the first clip of the Telecommunications Act of 1996, the press conference.
Yes.
As they're announcing it. And so, what you got me watching that for, man? Why? Like, why? Like, why? That's before we get into it, like the video, hit the like button, hit the share button. Please subscribe if you are not subscribed. But yeah, why am I watching that? What am I? Why?
So listen. There's a method to the madness. So
What is it, please?
Everybody turns on their TV and they look at their media, they look at all of these things, and they wonder, yo, back in the 90s, we had so much representation and everybody had a voice, and you just had a lot of people that were able to participate in media. You had the radios that were owned by Black people and Latino people, and you had all this type of participation in the overall media, correct?
Correct.
So when you fast forward to today, you look at all of your channels and you normally see pretty much one vision of what everybody looks like. So you have all of these channels that are showing one vision produced by one person of what everybody in our culture acts like, talks like, sound like, all of these things that we complain about on the Twitters and the Facebooks and the Instagrams. The reason being is because of the Telecommunications Act of 1996. So let's walk with me on this journey. So
please.
The Telecommunications Act is signed in 96. Prior to that, you had radio stations that were owned by normal people like you and me. Kathy Hughes, which was one of my bosses at one point, was one of those people who owned her own radio station.
Gotcha.
So before the Telecommunications Act of 96, normal people were able to control radio stations. Normal people were able to have channels of their own. You was able to produce. You had a lot of different people who, prior to the Telecommunications of 96, was able to produce their own things. Where you had a Keenan Ivory Wayans who was able to produce in living color. You had all of these types of people who were able to control the media because everyone was able to get a piece of it and control it. What the Telecommunications Act of 96 did was it incentivized big business, big corporations to come in, buy up the media, buy up the radio stations, buy up the television stations. And what they did was they created a competitive marketplace where big businesses either bought out smaller radio stations or smaller television companies, or they simply took the employees and brought them on to the bigger businesses, which is why you had iHeartRadio who owns 70 or 80% of the market, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, iHeartRadio apparently has more channels now. It grew from 40 stations to 1,240 stations, and that's 30 times the congressional regulation that was previously allowed before we get the Telecommunications Act that you were talking about.
Precisely. And on the media side, you have companies like Viacom who came in and they bought out everything media. You had BET that got bought out by Viacom. You had MTV that got bought out by Viacom. All of these stations got bought out by Viacom, and you notice what BET looked like before the Telecommunications Act of 96 and what it transformed into today.
Because it had to play to keep the money coming in.
Exactly.
But one thing I wanted to take away was from the actual speech in itself, in that you hear everything right now that we're talking about in terms of how the act was very damaging to the regulations in and around ownership, around whether it be internet, whether it be movies, TV stations, etc. What we get into, though, moving forward and here and now, is you get this same type of platitude, these same type of speeches where you have people who are telling you, on one hand, that the bill is good for you, like the George Floyd Act. Like, one hand is good for you, and that everything that he said that it was in terms of helping, like, the floodgates and the free movement, all of that is talk about deregulation. And I know a lot of people want to believe that one party or the other is about regulation and one is not. But I think when it comes down to that, I think both the Democrats and the GOP have not failed, but capitulated to their true base, which is capitalists, very, very wealthy ones. And so therefore we get things to now further get deregulated. We see right now in the age of Facebook, Twitter, and all of these different social media sites coming under fire because people want regulations in and around these platforms, and their conversations on how that should be done. Some think that they should be treated as news proprietors, so that in a sense, and this is something that I gotta go look up and dig deep into, but basically Twitter and Facebook, companies that have a multitude of articles, would have to then take the same risk and responsibility as a news publication.
Like a Reuters.
Yeah, so you have to have the same level of accountability, because as it states right now, Twitter, Facebook, everything is free game, and they have the autonomy to wipe out whatever messages they want. That's why you see even when we move it away from the regulations in and around how you can be an iHeartMedia, which is, again, the owner of, what's that, Charlemagne the God and the whole Breakfast Club. Yeah. That whole thing, they're owned by them. And then on top of that, you have other monopolies right now. Because in this environment where everything is moving to be digital, now we're talking about Silicon Valley having to be in this conversation. Like you said, you got the Verizons, the AT&Ts. We saw the merger just recently with what's his name, John Legere over at T-Mobile with Sprint. Yep. That went through. We saw Comcast come in and make some consolidations, and then the whole Byron Island case that had went down. Those are outcomes of people being allowed to accumulate large amounts of wealth through deregulation, and through that deregulation allows them not even more lobbying power because they're able to have more money. That is true, in fact, indeed. But even within those regulations also weaken what it is the overlap can be in terms of what becomes legal for lobbying or doing certain types of business that in past would have been frowned upon. Mm-hmm. And so it is definitely a crazy situation and a crazy bill. And did you have anything else to say?
Most importantly, I left out one of the most important aspects of what the Telecommunications Act really did. Mm-hmm. Most importantly, when you look at the news. So when you look at the news, ask yourself, before 96, it was common to see programs about real investigative type of news where you had reporters who took months and they really took their time to deliver the truth. You had reporters that you knew by name that did this, the Dan Rathers, those type of reporters that really took this disseminating information.
Journalism
seriously.
Not corporate journalism.
Exactly. What the Telecommunications Act in 1996 most importantly did, it turned news from delivering true facts to delivering you ratings.
Yeah, because now you got Jeff Bezos who can own Amazon.
Exactly.
And
so
there's so many critiques you can have about capitalism.
Exactly. Exactly. But we went from a Dan Rather who would spend months trying to deliver a message to a Tucker Carlson who will just get up there and say the most outlandish thing and get his ratings and not care about none of the facts.
Because it's Bezos a bus. It's Bezos a bus. Nobody cares. Everybody wants to be Bezos. Because again, we talking about this right now. a lot of people would say, well, if they're going to deregulate it, let me take advantage. And like we said on our last episode of Eavesdrop, y'all should go check that out, Earth Day special.
Thank you.
We're going to have to move counter to capitalism to solve a lot of these issues. That being one, because you can't have people who are just responding to the policies that are being laid out in the sense that, oh, well, if they're going to now allow this, or if they're going to make the George Floyd Act and give police more money and resources under the guise of training, then the response can't be to that, oh, well, you know what? I take that back. There hasn't been a response to none of that, unfortunately. Because just like this, when it's democratic power and nobody wants to oppose. And everybody has like smoke for the GOP. And this is where all of these policies, watching him talk about how it's so great and understanding and have read everything that this whole privatization of services, it is going to have the masses in a very, very great pickle, because right now it's becoming harder and harder to critique government because government is shielded by corporations, and corporations, when you're trying to hold them accountable, there is no account because it's not their purview. The best example is when you look at like philanthropy. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that you shouldn't be philanthropic. You should. That's a good deed. But I think we put too much emphasis on trying to use philanthropy to fix governmental societal issues. Exactly. That's not their place and that's not their roles. It's like people asking about celebrities doing certain stuff in the community, blah, 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 blah. Like, yeah, I hear you. I agree. That's nice, and we do need that. But I think we need more of their behavior, more of their presence than actually their money. Because the money, without the guidance, without the mentorship, without the foresight, without the understanding, means absolutely nothing. But with that being said, entertainers are also not obligated to do that because in a lot of cases, they don't be having it anyway.
Exactly. It belongs to the government for the most part, if you want to be literal about it.
So, the Telecommunications Act, look, 6 corporations control 90% of the media in America. I'm going to put this in the description box below because, everybody think I be on cap or Welling, and I'm not.
I'm telling you, information these days, it reads like an Orson Welles book.
And it's from the Business Insider. And so when you talk about 6 corporations, put that in context, owning all media, and then people want to say, oh, well, you shouldn't believe in conspiracy theory. When time after time after time, we have media who gives us misrepresented stories, have been in cahoots with other industries, because if you got those 6 people are also interfacing with government. I read something earlier where the DOD, you have to go through a process to actually get approved if you want to shoot a movie. So filmmaking in Hollywood has a whole MOU, memorandum of understanding, that, look, and this is on a case-by-case basis, like film by film, producer by producer, but there is a process in place that if we want to shoot a movie, we got media, all of that, we got to go fill this out and be approved for it. So that means you have companies who have control over who comes through that industry and who gets access to all of the things that come along with that industry.
But you let black folk tell it. You just need to go run for president because you got all these opinions. So why don't you go run for politics?
Because the same reason everybody out here willing to turn the blind eye and still watch the NFL.
You can't make it up.
But we out, man. We gonna catch y'all again. This was another Sage Talk. Can you hit the like button, please? Can you hit the share button? Go check out our other content over at our YouTube, The Gilded Sages. Head over to our website if you need some graphic design done. We also will be having some forums come up over there. So please, thank you. Hit that subscribe button, and we will catch y'all on another day. So thank you. It is what it is, and we out.